A new report claims Norfolk is one of the worst places for teenagers to grow up in. An organisation called Ambitious Minds, who are education specialists, has crunched key government data, which they say impacts on young people's prospects. And all but one of Norfolk's districts are outside the top 200 in England and Wales. Sean McGuire is chief executive of Ambitious Minds. He told me how they formed the rankings.
The data, Mark, all comes from publicly available government sources. And as the objective of the report is to identify those parts of England in which young adults face even more difficult circumstances than average in building independent, sustainable lives, which is what we want them to do, we looked at the key things which compose that, which we believe are employment, education, housing, and the general social issues that they face in coming into adulthood. So that's the basis of the data that we assemble for the report.
And whichever way you cut it, Norfolk comes out badly.
Well, I think the way to put it is that there are certain parts of Norfolk that are not performing very well by that criteria in the context of our report. I do want to stress that, in case anyone thinks we're attacking the fair county of Norfolk. We're not. We're saying, for example, if you're a young person in Great Yarmouth, that the average GC point score is amongst the lowest in the country. Only 1 in 8 students who complete sixth form at state schools go on to one of the top 30 universities. That produces immediate problems, because I don't think there's anyone would dispute the idea that there is a correlation between education achievement and getting a good, secure, well-paid job. So I think they start on the back foot, and the government's own statistics indicate that.
It's interesting just looking, because obviously we're concentrating on Norfolk here, but looking at the areas that are at the top of your table, the rankings, Kingston upon Thames, Kensington and Chelsea, Windsor and Maidenhead are in there. I mean, that's not a great surprise. You know, is money a lot to do with this?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's falling off their seats at that, are they? I think it's that they are clearly better resourced areas. There are higher average levels of employment. They're a cadre of simply economically, as you say, better off areas, and that the results that flow from that become obvious. And I think what we're saying is that young adults in England in 2012 face an extraordinarily difficult economic environment. We're in the worst recession since the Great Depression. It's never easy being a teenager. It's never easy, getting the right qualifications at school, going on to college or university and getting a job. In 2012, it's much, much more difficult. And we think that there are things that can be done to make the journey to independent adulthood easier and more likely to succeed, and that's the point of the report.
So if someone at Norfolk County Council was thumbing through this and looking at these results, what would you think they should be doing to try and get Norfolk up the table a bit?
That's a very good question, and I think the first thing to stress is that we're not, it's not that these problems predate whoever at the moment is the leader of the council or the chief executive of the council. These are long-established trends. What we believe is that every young adult in the UK would benefit enormously from being given a planned program of life skills training which is rooted in financial comprehension. They face today a far more challenging environment than previous generations, and the range of problems and the depth of problems which they're supposed to have personal solutions to is vastly more sophisticated and more challenging than it used to be. And we think it's irresponsible to simply let these young adults leave school, go into the maelstrom of the world for work, world of work if they're lucky enough to get a job, particularly in an economic environment like this, without having been prepared adequately by the education system to meet those challenges. And at the moment, we don't think that's happening.
And if a teenager is ambitious, do they need to leave Norfolk to get on in life?
No, I don't think that that would be, I suppose, a private decision of theirs, but I would very much desire, as I think anyone would, that people are able, wherever it's possible, to seek work in their home areas. I mean, I'm from St Helens in the northwest of England, and we suffer from some of the same problems that people in Norfolk do. And traditionally, there's also been an exodus of the talented and able people from towns like St Helens because they couldn't get employment at home. Now, that's not something I think that the local authority in either of those places can do much about. But what we're saying is, wherever those young adults find themselves, that they are equipped with a set of skills that allow them to build a sustainable, independent adult life. This generation could face the prospect, which is incredible, of being less well off than the previous generation. Well, that's been something unknown in this country really since the end of World War II. and that has consequences for all of us.
That's Sean McGuire, who's Chief Executive of Ambitious Minds. We're listening to that. Chris Starkie, Programme Director of the New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership. And Chris was previously in charge of shaping Norfolk's future. Evening to you, Chris. What's your reaction to the report?
Evening, Mark. I think, well, it was interesting to read the report, and then interesting, really, to hear, in a sense, the human voice behind the report, and and Sean's take on how Norfolk fits into the whole thing, really.
Do they have a point?
Well, I think they do have a point. It's interesting the data and statistics they've used. You could take issue with any report and any stats and so on, but education, employment, housing, and social elements are all pretty important if you're a teenager. I suppose if they'd also added in quality of life and crime into the statistics, Norfolk would have done rather a lot better. As we know, Norfolk is actually the safest county in the country crime-wise, and quality of life is very high, so they didn't include those stats in, which would have changed things.
I did actually put that into, because we did record quite a long interview, and we had to obviously cut it a little bit shorter, but I did mention, there's low crime, we've got nice countryside in Norfolk. He said, well, actually, the things that they checked, education, employment, housing, were probably more important to a young teenager or a young person growing up. Yeah,
so I wouldn't dispute that, and the fundamentals are that our education system is improving, but has a way to go. Our employment opportunities have been limited, but are improving, and housing and social issues we didn't fare quite so badly on as if you look at the data in the tables. I think one thing that's certainly true is geographic isolation is an issue, because if you look across the report, places like Cornwall, the northeast, the northwest, coastal areas fare poorly, because actually you are, in a sense, physically at the end of the line. Your chances and your opportunities are restricted by physically where you live. So, improvements to rail, road, broadband, better connectivity will. That's why for us that's so important, plugging us in really into the mainstream, and employment opportunities. The focus of ourselves and our partners, the county council and others, is about trying to ensure that we maximise the employment sectors that have potential. So the enterprise zone, in Great Yarmouth and Lowestoft, the renewable energy sector, the green economy. These are areas which have real opportunities for growth and for jobs right here in Norfolk.
But if you're not able to do that, Chris, then what happens is that the point that I raised at the end of that previous interview, you will see an exodus of young people leaving the county.
That's right, and people will not stay around in an area where there aren't great prospects. So, our job and the job of our partners is to try and ensure there are these employment opportunities. Take as one little example of it, Wells next to the sea. There are now potentially up to 100 people working in an offshore wind cluster right now up there. That didn't exist a few years ago. There were few opportunities for people in the town to gain employment in Wells next to the sea. So that's one little example of what we're hoping to see at a greater scale over the next 2, 3, 4 years, giving young people choices and opportunities no matter where they live.
Interesting to talk to you tonight, Chris. Thank you very much for coming on and talking to us.
No trouble.
Chris Starkie, who's Programme Director of the New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership.